Blackberry Mountain wore its cloak of mist like a shroud, obscuring the hidden veins where moonshine stills whispered steam into the cool Appalachian night. Eli Jessup, his steps as familiar with the mountain paths as they were with the lines on his weathered hands, navigated through the thick brush where the lantern dimmed under layers of city glass. At 74 years old, every step was measured and steady despite the years that had worn his body and slowed his stride. The woods around him were alive with the nocturnal chorus of cicadas and howls, but Eli moved silently, like a ghost among shadows. His destination was a small clearing, veiled by thickets of mountain laurel and the ever-present fog that clung to the slopes of Blackberry Mountain. There, hidden from the prying eyes of lawmen and rival moonshiners, stood as still, aged, reliable, and as full as fire as the day he had built it. The steel was constructed from a patchwork of copper and steel that gleamed dully under the moonlight that trickled through the canopy. It was here that Eli had spent countless nights refining his craft through decades of prosperity and poverty. Blockade liquor wasn't just his livelihood, it was his heritage. A craft passed down through generations of Jessups who had distilled their spirits from the same Appalachian springs that fed the surrounding mountain stream. As Eli approached the still, he set his lantern down and inspected the apparatus with a practiced eye. His hands, gnarled and strong, made minor adjustments.
"Still holding up, old girl,"
he murmured, patting the steel affectionately. The metal was warm to the touch, the belly of the beast humming softly as it worked its magic, turning corn mash into liquid gold. Eli lifted the lid of the barrel, stirred the mash with a long wooden paddle. The mixture bubbled angrily, releasing the hiss of steam into the cool air. Satisfied, he replaced the lid, his gaze drifting upward to the star-pierced sky, visible through the clearing's canopy. It was on nights like this that he felt the weight of his years most vividly, a reminder of the sands slipping relentlessly through the hourglass of time. Jealous then, a rustle from the underbrush snapped Eli back into the present. He reached instinctively for his trusty rifle, leaning against a steel.
"Who's there?"
he called out, his voice steady, despite the tension that tightened his frame. "It's just me, Pap," came the soft reply as the figure stepped into the clearing. Maggie, with her mother's fiery hair and her father's sharp eyes, she approached, her own steps nearly as silent as Eli's.
"You shouldn't be out here, gal."
"And you shouldn't be out here alone," Maggie countered, her smile visible even in the dim light as she joined him by the still. Eli couldn't suppress his own smile, recognizing the stubbornness in her tone. It was his own. Truth be told, Maggie was all Eli had, and the old man was all the young girl had, since she lost her ma and pa when she was just a baby. She was so young that she didn't even have a single memory of them, and her grandpap had raised her for the past 14 years, teaching her everything she needed to survive. But he tried to keep the old copper kettle a secret from her, and here it was. Tonight was the first time she had discovered his secret, and he was searching for the right words. Yet, in reality, Maggie was sharp as a tack, and she was keen to all his movements. She had long known about his nightly activities, whether the old man knew it or not. Heck, she had watched him night after night for weeks, and could have probably finished up the batch for him. Together, under the moon, grandfather and granddaughter stood by the still for just a moment before heading back down to the cabin. Before long, the morning sun had just begun to crest over the ridge, casting long, thin shadows. Eli, who had spent the night trying to tell Maggie she should never visit the still again, because it was too risky and dangerous. And now the pair sat on the creaky wooden porch, watching the world awaken. The air was crisp, fresh with the scent of pine and the lingering coolness of dawn. It was Maggie who broke the silence. "You think I'm ready, Pap?" she asked, her voice tinged with both excitement and a hint of apprehension. The old man paused before answering.
Now, you've got the makings, gal, but shining is more than just knowing how to run a still. And, to be honest, it's ruined a many a man's lives. And your ma and pa would be right smart disappointed in me if they knew I let you around it.
Just then, there was the far-off sound of an engine churning over Nelson's Gap, and, within a few minutes, both looked up to see a sleek, black car come to a stop near the front gate as a cloud of dust slowly settled around it. Out stepped a man in a sharp suit, his hat held in one hand, clearly a stranger. And, in Dry Cove, strangers were rare and seldomly brought good news. Old man Jessup peered out, his face hardening, as the man approached. "Marnin'," the stranger called out, his voice carrying an air of authority. "Are you Eli Jessup?"
Well, what's left of him?
A mountaineer replied. The man paused at the bottom of the porch steps. "My name is Agent Harlan Beck, and I'm with the Bureau of Prohibition," he introduced himself, flashing a badge. "I've been assigned in this area to address the illegal distillation of alcohol." Maggie's heart sank, but she masked her fear behind the expressionless face. And Eli Jessup, he didn't so much as flinch. He'd dealt with revenuers before.
I don't know nary a thing about no illegal activities, Agent Beck. This mountain might have a secret or two, but they ain't mine to tell.
Agent Beck nodded, his expression unreadable. "I understand, Mr. Jessup. However, just so you know, I intend to clean up this area. If you hear anything, I'd appreciate your cooperation." His gaze then shifted to Maggie, and he offered a polite nod. "I reckon I'll be seeing y'all in the near future." And a few minutes later, the lawman's car disappeared over the ridge. "Pat, what are we going to do?" Maggie whispered.
Well, I'll do what I've always done, gal. I'll be smart, and I'll be careful, and I ain't gonna let no good-for-nothing government man tear apart what all of my kin have built.
"But Pat, he'll be back," Maggie pressed. The worry was clear in her eyes, but the old man said nothing more. The very next morning, Preacher Silas Moore made his way up the path to the Jessup cabin. The Baptist preacher, once the moonshiner himself, had found religion in his later years and was now known for his fiery sermons. The Reverend's gait was slow, calculated, and he carried a worn Bible under his arm. "Morning, Eli," Silas greeted. His voice was soft, knowing well the troubles weighing on his old friend's mind. "I hear there was a visitor from the government making the rounds in Dry Cove." Silas settled into a chair next to Eli, placing his Bible in his lap. "I heard about the revenuer stiffing around. It seems like the world's creeping in and slowly climbing this mountain. Changing fast on us." Eli sighed, his eyes not leaving the horizon.
It's changing too fast, Silas. I don't know if I can keep up anymore, nor if I should even try.
Silas opened his Bible, but he didn't read from it. Instead, he looked earnestly at Eli. "Well, I remember the days when we set up our first still together. We were young and full of fire. We thought we were invincible. But time teaches us otherwise, and I found my peace in the Lord. And I believe there's a path for you too." Eli scoffed.
Silas, now you know I respect you, but I ain't never been much for churching. My faith has always been in the woods, the still and the mash, and it's done good for our folks here.
The preacher pressed gently. "You put your faith in the work of your hands, and that's noble, but there's a bigger plan out there. Maybe it's time for a change. You know, you're all Maggie Scott. You're the only family she's ever known, since the fever took her ma and pa when she was just a baby. Now, don't get me wrong, brother. You've done a fine job of raising her, but she's at a crossroads in life. She's still innocent, and ain't never made a drop of liquor. It ain't no life for a gal like Maggie. You know it, and I know it. Eli rubbed his chin, his gaze softening.
Yeah, that gal Maggie's stronger and smarter than I ever was.
Silas placed his hand on Eli's shoulder. Sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is just let go and trust in the next generation. Trust in Maggie. And maybe put a little trust in the Lord too, Eli. He hadn't steered me wrong since I turned to him.
Well, I'll think on it, Silas. That's the best I can promise.
Silas smiled, a warm, reassuring smile. Well, that's all any of us can do, Eli. Reflect and hope that we're choosing right. And as Silas stood to leave, Eli found himself clutching the old Bible, but the Reverend had absent-mindedly left on the chair, and he called out,
Silas, your book.
And Silas turned his eyes, twinkling. Oh, just keep it, Eli. It might help you find some answers. Eli held the Bible, feeling its weight and age, and watched as Silas Moore walked down the path, the morning light casting a long shadow behind him. Maybe it was time to look for new paths, for Maddie's sake, if not his own. You're watching the Appalachia Channel.